Oh dear, so I finally understand what bloating is. 20 years or so after playing Neopets, and then when you feed your pet too much, it says your pet is bloated and it can't possibly eat anymore. And yeah, at the time I had no idea what that meant. And since then, I've got a friend on Instagram who's occasionally posted things about her issues, and she's mentioned bloating a lot. And I think that's what prompted me to look it up like ages ago. And I just didn't quite understand it because, like, it's saying your stomach literally expands and can expand quite a lot. And I'm like, I don't know what that is. But yesterday, I had so much stomach pain yesterday. And then I was going to the toilet just before bed. And I'm like, stomach looks a bit funny. And then this morning when I got up to go to the toilet, I looked down and it's like, oh no, it's flat again. So I finally, in my mid 30s, discovered what bloating looks like on me and understand what it feels like now and wonder maybe that's what I've had for ages. And it just made me think about all the different things that I don't understand in life that other people seem to just magically know. The other one that has confused me for a long time. I don't remember when I figured it out, but like when I was a kid, people would always say that my hair was really thick, and I don't know if it's just me misinterpreting things, or I had this like Simpsons book. It was like this hardcover Simpsons book, and I didn't even watch or understand The Simpsons back then. I don't think I was allowed to watch The Simpsons, I don't know. But I had the book, and it had this thing about like the cross sections of your hair. And I think I wasn't entirely like knowing that it was meant to be a joke, but they had things like, you know, straight hair having a circle cross section and curly hair having a sort of curvy diamond cross section, and something else. And then they had like permed hair in a flower shape, and that's probably where I was like, that can't be right. But I think maybe because of that, when people are saying my hair was thick, I was like, how can you tell that the cross section is any thicker than anyone else's? But of course, you know, I think this is only in the last maybe 5 years or so that I realized they meant like how much hair I have, or like how dense it is, or I think that's what it is. Maybe I'm still wrong, but that was something that puzzled me for ages. And I don't know if this is because I'm socially isolated, or I'm a bit weird, or maybe it's because my parents were so busy with my disabled brother that they didn't have time to teach me these things, or maybe they didn't know, because I know there are some things like you know, I didn't get a lot of help with my schoolwork, for example, and I did design and technology, and you have to have this portfolio and so on. And I went to Officeworks, got myself these big A3 folders, and sort of like collaged or scrapbooked together my like process diary, or I don't even remember what it was called. It was so long ago. But, you know, some of my classmates had these really nicely printed A3 booklets, and I'm just looking at it going, how the fuck did they do that? Like, where would one even find a big printer? And then, of course, a few years back, or actually it was a while ago now, my sense of time is all over the place, but when I worked at Officeworks, I was in the print and copy section, and I was in charge of the A3 printers. And then HSC time came around, and all the DT kids, design and technology kids, came in to print their portfolios. Portfolio, that's what it is. And then I'm like, oh, so this would have been maybe, let's say 6 to 8 years after I left school that I finally figured out how all these kids were getting their nicely printed portfolios, and it's because they took them to Officeworks. And yeah, I didn't ask my parents for help, really. Like, I asked them to help buy my first video camera, which I still have somewhere. Really old thing that used a little tape. But, like, I didn't ask them for help with other stuff, so, you know, like, had I asked them, would they have known? And there's other things like, oh my god, in year 7, like, first year of high school, and we had design and technology, and we were making bags, and, you know, we did practice bags out of, I think, like, calico or whatever the basic stuff was, and then, for our final ones, we were supposed to like get our own fabric and whatever, and it just didn't occur to me to ask my parents to help me buy fabric, or even like look for fabric. I didn't have any sense of anything, and so I just used more calico from the school, and then my teacher was like, yeah, that's probably like a bit too basic, so she helped me tie-dye it, and that's how I made that. Whereas all the other kids, and this is also at a private school, so a lot of these kids, their parents have money and would take them out to go and buy like really nice fabrics, and I was just using this shitty calico. Yeah, and I think it's probably because it just didn't occur to me to ask my parents. I think that's some of that trauma stuff coming in there, just me not knowing that I could ask for things and just assuming that, I mean, my parents did sort of teach me to assume that we had no money. I realize now in hindsight we were doing better than some other people out there, like a lot of other people out there. Like the fact that I went to a private school should have been the first hint, but you know, they were always saying things like, oh, shake the money tree, and you know, teaching us to just save money and feel like we couldn't afford anything when actually we could. I mean, I guess with private school fees they were busy paying for that, but I thought for a long time we had no money. This is turning into a really random ramble. I'm sorry, I thought I was just going to talk about bloating, but yeah, no, I just assumed we didn't have money for ages, and so I think that's why I try to save. I mean, obviously in the past, like I collected all this stuff when I got like my first job and finally had the money to actually buy things for myself, but no, like for ages I just thought we had no money and thought I couldn't ask for anything because we had no money. Yeah. It's only like when I got to high school, no, when I got to uni, my first attempt going to uni, and I accidentally joined the Western Sydney Students Association despite not living out west. When like, you know, they're asking where do you live, and I told them my suburb, and they're like, oh, that's like really rich, and I'm like, oh, I didn't even know I lived in what's considered to be a rich area. Now, of course, being a rich area, if you go closer to the beach, that's where all the mansions are. I do not live near the beach. Although, relatively speaking, if you live further west, you're much further from the beach. But anyway, yeah, just, that's funny how the whole bloating thing just made me go on this sort of thought process of other things I don't understand, and then wondering, is it because my parents either didn't know themselves or just I didn't know I could ask them for help and they were too busy to teach me stuff. I wonder also though, speaking of parents, you know, my mum's Japanese, and I guess maybe culturally there's a few things, and like in terms of language barriers, I mean, I don't remember her having bad English when I was young. I mean, her English she kind of doesn't give a fuck. So even today, after having lived in Australia longer than she ever lived in Japan, her English, she still does some odd things with her English, and she still has the strong accent. Apparently her Japanese is not that great either. My aunt arrived yesterday. We've also got my cousin, and so there's been a lot of Japanese talk. And then today Mikey's carer is also Japanese this morning, so I imagine just the 4 Japanese women chatting. But yeah, my aunt says that mum's Japanese is not good, and mum just says, yeah, I don't care, I just speak whatever I want to say however I want to say it, and we're all like, okay. But yeah, no, I wonder, like, maybe she had been in Australia for a while before having me, and I was not their first attempt at a kid. So, like, it's not like she hadn't been speaking, but I wonder, maybe I didn't remember that she might have still been learning some English at the time, and yeah, probably couldn't explain some things to me. Like, I remember when I was really, really, really little and she was trying to help me with my spelling, because, like, very early on I got a bit of help with homework, and then later I just no help at all, which led to some really difficult situations actually, because I'd be trying to make a project and I'd be trying to do it all myself, just with stuff that I had, whereas the other kids, their parents would help them and buy them like the proper paper mache and all this kinds of, like, you know, funny little things that look like crystals and stuff, and, you know, helping them do the research. And I was always just like, why are my assignments so crap? It's because the other kids got help basically, and I was just trying to shove stuff together. Then we had like book parades, and like all the other kids, their parents would hire them nice costumes, whereas I had this book called Germs, 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 and I thought, I'm gonna make my own costume. And I got this garbage bag and like cut a hole in it so I could wear this garbage bag, and then I like copied pictures from the book and made them bigger just by hand and stuck them all over my garbage bag, so I had all these like germ characters over me, and then just grabbed like a broomstick and then I'm like sweeping and so I had this like really dodgy ass costume, but everyone was really impressed because it was so obvious I had made my own costume amongst all these kids who had their parents had either hired them or like helped make them and all this kind of stuff. It just, you know, like I probably lived as if we were poor in some ways, but no, going back to the language thing, Yeah, I wonder if some things mum just couldn't help me with, and the spelling thing. Yeah, so she was trying to help me with my spelling when I was really, really young, like maybe my first year in school. So she didn't really have to worry about my middle brother teaching him how to spell at that point, and he needed a lot more help with homework. He sort of played up in school, and yeah, just was less focused than me. So as soon as as soon as like one other kid needs more help, I'm on my own. I'm the oldest kid. I should know how to do stuff myself. Anyway, to the point, she was trying to teach me the word Friday. And I recall a weird exchange where I thought I was saying exactly what she was saying, how she was saying it. But I think because of her accent, I might have said fly day, and she's going, no, Friday. And I'm like, fly day, fly. Like, those kinds of stereotypical comedy things that you might see between people with accents. I don't know, I think, like, was it Get Smart, and they're talking about the claw and they keep saying the craw. No, the craw. That kind of stuff has actually happened in my childhood. Like, it's a stereotype for a reason. Anyway, so I wonder if maybe language barriers made it a bit harder for my parents to just teach me life stuff when I was younger. And then, yeah, by the time I got to that point where I was sort of expected to be independent, why ask my parents anything? And I grew up before the internet was much of a thing. I think Google was around when I was sort of like later in high school. Before that, what we used, like Alta Vista and Ask Jeeves, and the favorite thing to ask Jeeves was like, hey Jeeves, are you gay? Like, that's the kind of maturity we had. So, and yeah, we didn't really do, like, the research. The teachers always wanted us to use books, and that whole thing about don't use Wikipedia, it's no good, blah blah, which of course now we know actually Wikipedia is not that bad as a starting point, and if you look at their sources you can actually find better stuff, but we didn't know that stuff back then. So yeah, there's just so much stuff that I didn't know, and wow, sorry, I'm really tired, so I wasn't sure where this was going to go. I was like, oh, I should talk about the bloating thing, because that's an interesting observation, but what else am I going to talk about? That would be a very short video if that's all I say, and somehow we've ended up on talking about my childhood and why I maybe don't know anything about the world. Of course, it does make me think, like, for example, people have thought maybe I have something like autism, and so that if I have, like, I mean, of course everything's a spectrum, so I don't know, if I'm further along the spectrum then I think, because I think I'm probably so mild it doesn't count, but if I'm a bit further along, then I realize then maybe that's another reason why I don't understand stuff. But I think a lot of, like, now that I think of it, the childhood stuff, that probably is a thing for me, and just not knowing how the world works, and then having, like, I had asocial tendencies very early on, so there's a lot of that too. I also, like, just wasn't interested in the same thing as the other kids. Like, the kids in primary school, they all were, like, into the Brady Bunch, for example, and my bedtime was, I think, at 6, and I think that's when the show started back then, and so one day, like, after hearing all this hype about it, I asked my parents if I could stay up past 6 to watch it, and I was so bored. So then the next day, they're like, do you want to watch this show? And I'm like, nah, fuck it, I'm going to bed. Of course, I didn't say fuck it, because I wasn't rude back then, but, yeah, like, I was very different early on and not really into all the trends that people were into. Like, I tried to understand why people were excited about things, and just sort of like, no. There may be a couple of things, like I did listen to Spice Girls, and I did listen to, was it Steps? Did that, my boots scooting babies driving me crazy, my obsession for Russian, my dance all day, a rodeo, Romeo, cowboy girl from head to 5, 6, 7, 8. I still have that CD somewhere. Bum 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 bum. Whatever. That's how, like, things that got to me in the 90s brainwashed me a little bit, so I still remember some of that stuff. Anyway, yeah, but I wasn't into Hanson, and I remember there was a bit of a, like, I don't know, in the playground, there were the girls who liked Spice Girls and the girls who liked Hanson, and they'd have arguments, and I was just like, okay. Yeah, but I don't know, I think I was a little bit socially weird early, so that could be another argument for something like autism. But then, the stuff with my disabled brother happened when I was 3, so that's enough time for things to get a little bit weird, like, going to, and then I think there were some cultural things, actually, because in primary school, before primary school, what do you call it, preschool, I can't even remember what things are called, but in preschool, because my mom's Japanese, and so she would kind of early on especially mix in Japanese words, and I didn't know that it was a different language. So I remember being in preschool and asking for a mikan, and the teachers being like, what the hell are you talking about? And I realized in hindsight, I should have said Mandarin, not mikan. But I was just like, yeah, mikan. And they're like, what? So there might have been some things like that where like I was trying to communicate and just had the wrong words. Because, yeah, we didn't really do the bilingual thing at home. Because once my youngest brother, the disabled one, was born, as I understand it, we were advised against having bilingual shit. Because, intellectual disability, it's going to be hard for him to understand two different languages. So instead we just have the occasional word that popped up. And then like made up words. Mum's made up words that aren't like anything in any language, like pukanui for belly button. There's strange things like that. I'm like, pukanui, it almost sounds Japanese, but apparently it's not. So there's stuff like that. Yeah, I think though, like, even without my little brother being intellectually disabled, probably wouldn't have learned much Japanese because mum just doesn't care and can't be bothered to teach stuff. So, yeah, but I don't, like, it's hard to remember enough of childhood to be sure about these things. I am thinking of asking my psychiatrist, like, I'm gonna tell him I kind of don't want to take any meds until, like, I let a few months go by because next month I finally get my studio space back, but then the month after that my parents are going away for a couple weeks, and so things are going to be a bit different because I think my other brother's coming home to help look after my disabled brother, and it's going to be weird with carers and potentially stressful, and so, if I'm stressed, that's a situational thing. And then a month after that I think things should get back to normal, so then I've got a month to sort of chill out and see if that helps with my mental health. Because my brother did point out that I seem to have been doing worse since I lost access to my studio space and all the stress of just having more people in the house and whatever. So yeah, I'm sort of thinking with a psychiatrist, I'll just be like, hey, so there's this situational stuff that I want to look at first. Because I would rather not take medications because I just react badly to them. And, if I try another one of his suggestions, that's another 2 weeks that I have to adjust to it, which means I can't be working on stuff that the more psychological stuff. So I'm going to be like, hey, so this is what's happening in the next 3 months. If by the end of that I'm not doing well, I think I'm going to consider taking lamotrigine first. I don't remember if I told you guys this, that he suggested lamotrigine, which is what my disabled brother is on for one of his conditions, I think epilepsy. And the reason, the research was a bit all over the place, and so Nervous Neuron helped me untangle that, because at first it looks like it's no good for depression. It's okay, it's stabilizing for bipolar depression, but more as a prevention rather than helping the depression side of that. But when you look more into the research, it seems that the early studies were not run for long enough, because it's one of those things that takes a long time to wean on. And so by the time they weaned anyone on, the study was over and they didn't have enough time to see if it actually helped. So that was kind of interesting. But the other thing, the main thing, so I've thought, okay, that could be a problem for bupropion as well. The thing is, lamotrigine both of these things are not approved for depression in Australia, but you can get them off-label as a private script, but that means you're paying full price. And when I look at it, the lamotrigine is much cheaper than the bupropion, so I'm like, maybe if, by the end of September I'm still not doing well, I'll give it a go, I'll start weaning on and I'll see how that goes. But I hope it doesn't get to that point. I mean, I've made jokes in the past because my disabled brother, he's so happy. He has no idea about his condition, which sucks because I know about my own condition, I know about my own suffering. He has no idea that he's different, he has no idea. He just assumes that he's the center of the universe, and he'll complain if he's not, and then he's super happy when people give him attention. But yeah, so because he's so happy, I've occasionally made jokes like, oh, I want some of what he's taking. And then now this psychiatrist is like, well, and it took me by surprise when he mentioned it. I'm like, I know what that is. It's only a medication that's haunted my life. So that may be a thing. We'll see. Why did I get onto the topic of my psychiatrist? I don't even know. Oh, when I do go see him. As well as that, if I remember, I better write some notes, but I'm planning to ask him, hey, so if you don't think I have schizoid personality disorder, what do you think I have? Because no one believes it's just depression. So I'll ask him that. I'm guessing that he would think it was autism. I think he probably noticed that, like, you know, when I'm in these therapy sessions, like, you know, that one-on-one kind of thing, my eyes tend to wander, and I tend to look at, like, all the different things in the, like, the different corners and different shapes in the room, and I think it's an anxiety thing, like, you know, rather than just focus on looking someone in the eye, I'm just like, oh, because, you know, I've got to talk about this stuff, and I've got to, you know, I've got to try and express myself, and I think I'm probably, like, as much as I can seem like I'm doing okay, there is that anxiety response, and so my brain is like trying to distract itself by looking at different things, and he has this funny little poster in there as well, and so my brain looks at that, and I think on my first session in particular, I was doing that a lot because, you know, you're meeting someone new, and as much as I've gotten used to the therapy kind of relationship, it's still like, this is a new person, I don't know how it's gonna go, and so I was probably a bit more anxious, and yeah, I think because I wasn't immediately making eye contact, or not making enough eye contact, he wondered about the autism thing. But, like, it's not like I have any problem making eye contact, it's not something I have to be conscious about. You know, I do it automatically, and then there's other behaviors that people do that I just know are rude. Like, it's not like I've had to train myself to recognize that people are doing something socially odd, so I don't think that's actually a thing. I think it's more of an anxiety thing. And also, when I was really young, I used to be interested in more Aboriginal stuff, especially Aboriginal mythology, and, you know, just learning about those different kinds of cultures where they're more tribal, so not just Aboriginal, but like in general. And I can't remember where I found this out, but in some tribal cultures in particular, like, looking someone in the eye is actually rude. And I think also, like, being interested in dogs, I know with dog body language, especially aggressive ones, looking them in the eye, especially like wolves and stuff, looking a wolf in the eye, that's a challenge. You're challenging them. And so at some point when I was younger, I got those ideas, and I think that made me a bit weird about looking people in the eye, because, you know, adults, when they think you're lying, they're like, look me in the eye when you're saying this so I know that you're not bullshitting me, kind of thing. But also then I'm reading, like, hearing about these other cultures and, like, just things in the animal kingdom, because we are animals in the end, and sort of thinking, like, is it rude to look someone in the eye? And, like, you know, if you stare at someone, it can be kind of freak them out. So I think that was kind of more of an overthinking thing rather than me not understanding to look people in the eye, not being able to read expressions. I think I'm fine with that. So I think he's probably just misinterpreting that, if that's what he thinks I have. And, you know, autism's in vogue, and particularly the underdiagnosis of females with autism, and so I feel like, you know, schizoid isn't popular. So that's why I find it funny when people say, oh, you're just making these videos because you're trying to get famous on YouTube or something, and I'm like, yeah, of all the disorders I could have picked, I could have picked, like, one that no one gives a shit about except people who are schizoid and the occasional psychology student. Yes, that was a very smart move on my part. And actually, I downloaded the vidIQ. I made a video for Patreon last night, because I downloaded the vidIQ app, and it got me to put in keywords about my channel, and of course my channel is super chaotic, so I just put everything that I could think of, and it told me that I should make DID videos, and I'm just like, oh my god. And then I look, like, you know, I look at examples it gives of DID videos, and I'm just like, oh, these fucking people, I can't, and, you know, I actually have the whole, like, possible DID assessment hovering over me, and I'm like, there is no way I am like those people, like, come on. Anyway, I mean, I know they tend to put on an exaggerated view of what it is, so I don't know, I just, these days, I question what some of the experts think, because I've realized that everyone is just human. Like, you know, when you're younger and you don't realize that the teachers go home at night, you know, like, you just sort of assume that authority figures know what they're doing, because that's how our brains are wired to think. Like, kids are very trusting, but then you grow up and you sort of like, yeah, I trust science and so on, but then you realize some of these people actually legit are not good at their jobs. So I'm a bit like, and, you know, like, the experience with the psychiatrist dismissing a bunch of stuff about me. The psychologist is good, but the psychiatrist, like, trying to gaslight me about side effects. You know, I got access to the things my old psychiatrist wrote about me, and he said that, yes, it's a side effect problem. They are considerable and genuine problems that I have. So my current psychiatrist has notes saying it's not the efficacy that's the problem, it's the side effects that make it hard for me to take medication. And then he's telling me, oh, I don't think it's the side effects. I'm like, fuck off, don't gaslight me. So, you know, and just... Anyway, how did I get onto this ramble? My God. Yesterday was really tiring, I gotta say, because, yeah, my aunt from Japan came over, and then, you know, she's gonna do the whole... I gave her a gift, but then she's got a suit, like, her entire suitcase was gifts for us. Like, there's even a new Huntan, I just haven't, like, taken the tag off yet. And then, like, you know, all these different sweets and biscuits and, you know, Japanese confectionery kind of stuff. Like, her whole suitcase was gifts for us, and then she's got another suitcase for her own stuff. So there was all that, and then we went to lunch, and then, God, I had to have a nap after lunch, and I think that's when I started feeling off with bloating. To bring us back to the bloating thing, I think I ate too much at lunch, or maybe the dish that I ordered had something in it that my stomach doesn't agree with. I'm not really sure, because I think a few times I've had that issue there with that dish. I'm not sure. I need to, like, try and keep better mental notes, or maybe I should actually write proper notes about the things that I'm eating, because I am noticing problems with my stomach. Like, it took me ages to realize I'm lactose intolerant. Like, I can have a little bit, but beyond a certain amount, my stomach is like, no, I'm not doing this. I didn't know I had lactose issues until I watched Intolerant by Jim Jeffries. He's an Australian comedian. If you guys don't know, he's quite rude and kind of gross. But yeah, watching his comedy, and he mentions, like, he didn't know until he was in his 30s that he had lactose intolerance, and that you can develop this later in life after having a lifetime of being okay with milk products. And I thought, oh shit, I am roughly that age. Maybe that explains a lot. So yeah, and then I think I have problems with soy sometimes, which is a bit embarrassing as a half Japanese person, because almost everything in Japan is either rice or soy. Like, you know, miso is made out of soy, and just so many things. Obviously soy sauce and tofu, so I have to be careful how much of that stuff I have. I don't know if maybe, though, it was more of a fermentation issue rather than the soy itself. I'm still trying to figure that out. But yeah, so something at this pub yesterday, we had pub food, and I think either I ate too much, or I ate the wrong thing, or maybe both. So after we came back from lunch, I just had to have a nap, and I was so glad that they you know, the Japanese girls, I'll just call them the girls had all gone up to the shops to, you know, buy some Aussie snacks, and then they came back after about 10 minutes after I'd gone and had a nap, but then they decided to go to the beach, so they were gone for a long time, and I was able to scrape in an hour of just lying around going like, and when I got up I was still feeling off, but after many runs to the toilet, I did start feeling okay, and so I was able to eat dinner, and dinner was good. We had, like, you know, the whole pork roast with the crackling, and yeah, potato salad, which is the only salad I approve of, apart from, like, Thai beef salad. If it's got meat in it, it's fine. But so, like, out of all the meat-free salads, potato salad, but it has to have Japanese mayonnaise, otherwise you're doing it wrong. Aussie mayonnaise is garbage. Has to be Japanese mayonnaise. Wow, I'm giving you guys food tips now as well. But yeah, no, I had that and had some corn. And then, like, I did okay. But then after that, as the night went on, I was just feeling so off, increasingly off. And, you know, I did my marking around on vidIQ. I did the video for Patreon. And then, you know, I went to bed like an hour earlier than I normally do, and I think I would have gone to bed earlier, except that I was just so tired. It was like, oh my god, trying to, like, do the whole brushing my teeth thing, and just the whole process of getting ready for bed. I think sometimes I stay up late just because that whole process feels like a lot, even though I know at the end of it I'll be able to sleep. It's just like, oh my god, I can't do it. But yeah, so usually I would read before bed. I got my book, I was in bed, got my book, and was just like, I can't do it. Rolled over, fell asleep, going like, ugh. And so, yeah, I woke up today feeling not great. But I have to film now because all the girls have gone somewhere. I don't know, maybe another beach. I didn't realize that Brisbane didn't really have beaches. You have to go like either to the Gold Coast or the Sunshine Coast. Because my cousin, before she came here, she was in Brisbane and she didn't like it because there weren't enough beaches. The beaches were too far away. Whereas in Sydney, at least if you're on the eastern side of Sydney, there are a lot of beaches around. Yeah, so they've gone out for a bit, and then Dad's gone to lunch somewhere, so this is like one of those rare times where I have the place to myself. And so even though I was like super tired, like, let's talk about bloating, and then go on a tangent about my childhood and the rest of my psychology. God knows what title I'm gonna give this freaking video. Yeah, I think that's all I've got. I need to get dressed and take my dog for a walk. It's like 1:20 p.m. already. I got up at 11:15, okay? I've only been up for 2 hours, and it was hard to get up, and the only reason I got up is because my dog was like, "You are awake! I demand your attention!" And so, yeah. But I think he's gotten a lot of attention, because one thing I like about my Japanese aunt is she actually really loves dogs, and so when my dog goes to her for attention, she actually does the whole Japanese thing of, you know, and actually gives him attention, whereas I think my parents, you know, he wants attention when they come home. He's so happy to see them, and then they just ignore him. And I think that's kind of sad, and potentially a metaphor for my childhood. And then, yeah, my cousin also doesn't really pay him much attention, which is really sad, because he really likes her too. Yeah, and she often doesn't even say hi when she gets home, and I don't know if that's a cultural thing, or if she's not really a teenager now. She's like, you know, early 20s. But maybe it's a youth thing, or I don't know, I find it weird, but hey, and so they're here for a few days, then they all go off to Fiji, so it's just me and Dad and Mikey, and then the girls come back, they spend a bit more time here, and then they all go, well, my aunt and my cousin will go, and then I can get my studio space back and try and, like, figure out, like, pick up where I left off and try and figure out things, and there's a lot going on, and it's a bit much, and wow, so I'm going to try and get these filming spots where I can, but while they're away I might be able to film more, but we'll see. Anyway, I'm so tired. Oh, will I make another video tonight? I don't even know how long it's going to take me to get this one up, so we'll see. Stuff and things, I guess. Bye.